Welcome to this channel, guys. Today I will be continuing the series called Fright Crew. Before I begin, let me quickly recap what happened in the last episode. These 5 students called Clarie, Missy, Pat, Maybe, and Stanley got their teacher offended. Due to this, they were being sent to clean the graveyard as a punishment. Clarie ended up getting herself injured and her blood pours on an ancient tree. The ghost of the most powerful witch appears before them and explains that they have mistakenly broken her spell, which has now freed a powerful demon into the world. She calls on 5 powerful gods, and the gods gives the teenagers a slize of their powers. Missy has the ability of strength. Stanley has the ability to gain knowledge of anything he touches. Pat can communicate with animals. Clarie has the ability to control elements, and maybe can travel to the spirit world and communicate with ghosts. The demon they mistakenly released to the world is called Belial. He is a demon who feeds on fears that makes him more powerful. Belial joins forces with the mayor who lost his wife to a vampire. The demon makes a deal with him to help avenge the death of his wife, and in exchange the mayor must help and release some wild beasts called the grunches to scare the people in the city so the demon can feed on those fears to return back to the world in full flesh. The teenagers use their combined powers to defeat the grunches and save the city. Upon discovering that those teenagers are a stumbling block in achieving his evil plans, the demon tells the mayor to focus his energy on killing them. This episode begins with the mayor who went to a mysterious forest to meet a bug-like creature. He shows the creature the pictures of the teenagers and bargains with him to kill them. On the other hand, the teenagers are on a field trip with some other students. Missy and Clarie are now on good terms, and they discuss with the other teens how awesome it was to defeat the grunches. Pat seems so distracted and is worried about something unknown. The teacher who took them on the field trip calls them together and tells them that they are going to get their hands dirtied as they will be going on a Honey Island swamp scavengers hunt. Clarie suggests they form a group as they need game plan to find the demon. Clarie, Maybe, and Stanley realizes that Pat hasn't been himself since they came for this field trip because the Pat they know talks a lot. Clarie meets Pat to ask what's wrong, but he denies that he's fine. The teenagers enters a boat as they begin their trip to the swamp to take pictures of some rare flowers, which is in homework given to them by their teacher. When they got to the swamp, they're surprised to find out that Pat grew up in this place. They begin to ask Pat lots of questions like what it was like to grow up on the swamp, but it seems this is something Pat doesn't wish to talk about. Pat sees a flower and memories flashes through his mind. We see a flashback where little Pat and his father are fishing mudbugs. We see the strong bond that both father and son had. Clarie and the others begs Pat to share with them his worries. Pat reveals that this is the first time he's been back here ever since his father died. That's the reason he lives with his auntie Alma. People say his father was attacked by a gator or got drowned, but Pat refused to believe those stories because his father knew the swamp like the back of his hand. He believes something else happened to his father. They all console Pat, but Pat suddenly hears a whispering voice telling Pat to come to her and she will tell him what happened to his father. Pat tells his friends about it since he is the only one that can hear the voice. Clarie tells him not to trust the voice because the last time he heard such a voice, it was literally the demon. While the rest of them were distracted looking for the rare flowers for their homework, Pat couldn't resist the voice claiming to give him answers, so he decided to trace where it's coming from. A kind of scary bridge with dozens of hands holding it comes out from a swamp for Pat to cross. Just as Pat crossed it, a strange creature shows up and confronts him. Missy and Clarie, who noticed Pat is missing, searches for him. They saw the creature confronting Pat, and Clarie immediately uses her element of fire to attack it. Pat stops them and clears out that the creature doesn't intend to hurt them. Pat uses his communication powers to talk to the creature and asked it to tell them her story. The creature introduces herself as the swamp and claims to know everything that happens here. She sees everyone who lives in the swamp as her family and tells Pat that he is her family since he used to live here. She watched and saw how Pat grew up with his dad and auntie. But one day, the harmony was disrupted when an evil fairy who steals souls called Few Follett attacks his dad. The Few Follett took out his father's soul and traps it inside his jar. The swamp tells Pat that the longer his dad's soul stays with the evil fairy, the more likely it will corrupt and become twisted. She concludes that he has to go free his dad as soon as possible. He is trapped at a place called the Court of Light. Right now, the evil fairy is using his illusions to steal more souls, and his friends are a grave danger. Pat, Missy, and Clarie hurries to see Maybe and Stanley drowning in a lake. Clarie uses her element of air to help them breathe, while Missy uses her super strength to unroot a tree, which helps Stanley and Maybe out of the lake. Clarie apologizes to Pat for not listening to him about the voice, as she's not used to trusting anyone but herself. Pat tells Maybe and Stanley their whole adventure and how he needs their help to battle the evil fairy to free his dad. The teenagers went to the building called the Court of Light where the swamp said Pat Dad's soul is, but they contemplate as the place unexpectedly turns out to be a fancy restaurant. As they enter the restaurant, they are shocked to see meals being cooked by creatures they cannot see. Just as they get a table for themselves and after the waiter serves them food, Pat shows Maybe a picture on what his dad looks like. Maybe uses his powers to enter the shadow realm so he can see the souls of everyone in the restaurant. He discovers things aren't what they appear to be in that restaurant as there are vampires there, and the waiter serving them food is a few follet. Maybe enters the kitchen to see trapped souls forced to cook at the restaurant, and among them is Pat Father. The waiter sends the teenagers out of the restaurants and Maybe who came out of the shadow realm explains to them everything he saw. One of their classmates called Madison works at the restaurant, so they decided to meet her so she can help them sneak inside the restaurant. Later that night, Madison takes them inside the restaurant but let them into a trap as she reveals herself to be a few follet. The teenagers get surrounded by hundreds of few follets, which is being led by their queen, Madison Mother. Maybe and Pat went through the back door of the restaurant and made their way to the kitchen to find Pat Dad. They see lots of jars with souls trapped inside it. Pat sees the jar his father's soul is trapped in as it's named Henry, which is his father's name. Before Pat opens the jar to free his dad, he begs Maybe to try and take him along to enter the shadow realm so he can see his dad one last time as he has so much to tell him. This worked as Pat sees the soul of his dad. After they embrace each other, his dad explains to him how he witnessed the few follet killing the former Rugerous leader Malcolm. That's why they killed him as well. The spirit of Papa Legba shows up and frees his dad. As Pat says his final goodbye to his dad, he is taken to the spirit world. Stanley, Missy, and Clarie are being chased inside the kitchen by the few follets. They all remember that they have powers of the most powerful spirit and shouldn't be running. Together, they all unleash their powers to fight the few follet to the extent that the creatures became so scared of them. Out of fear, the Queen Few Follet confesses that the mayor wants to kill them and he is working with a demon. The next episode begins with a guy called Nelson playing a football game. Some grunches comes out from nowhere and attacks his teammates. He calls on Stanley and Missy to help him out, but they refused. He wakes up from his bed and realizes it's just a dream. His father, who turns out to be the mayor, enters his room after hearing his screams. Just in case you don't know much about this guy Nelson, let me tell you about him. Nelson is a very close friend with Stanley and Missy, and he is the only child of the mayor. Concerning his dream, he tells his father, the mayor, on how Stanley and Missy abandoned him to be eaten by the grunches in his dreams. And in reality, he says his friends have been acting weird as they have been hanging out with some nerds lately. Stanley and Missy are his best friends, but lately they barely talk. The mayor tells him that it wasn't just a dream but his instincts trying to tell him something. He learned about betrayal a hard way from the so-called friends, so he advises his son not to give a damn about those friends as they can betray him anytime, but family no matter what will always look out for him. Later that night, the mayor goes into an abandoned amusement park and is being met by the demon. The demon wants to help the mayor take revenge on the supernatural creatures as they plan on how to lure the vampires and the Rugerous to this place. Meanwhile at school, due to the all incidents so far, Stanley, Missy, Clarie, and Maybe are now really close friends. Clarie tells them that immediately they are done with their activities for the day, they should stop by at her house so they can think of plans to stop the demon. She says they should be careful as anyone else could be working with the demon. She brings up Nelson's name because he is the mayor's son, but Missy and Stanley defends that Nelson is their good friend and will never do the evil stuff his dad is doing. Nelson shows up at the table where they are conversing and asked Missy and Stanley to see him privately. Nelson asked them why they have been hanging out with those nerds. Few weeks ago, Missy and Clarie hated each other, but now they are best friends. He feels there is a lot going on and wants them to tell him. Stanley reveals to him that vampires and monsters are real, but Nelson knows because he saw them when the grunches attacked the club, but what he doesn't know is what it has to do with them. With no other choice, Missy reveals that his dad is working with a demon and he was the one that sent those grunches. Nelson attacks Stanley and threatens him not to speak nonsense about his family. Missy uses her super strength to defend Stanley. Nelson is shocked by her super strength and leaves saying his dad was right. Friends are not to be trusted. Stanley returns home to see his mom and his little sister, but is shocked when he sees the mayor. His mom Lucy works at the mayor office, so they appear to know each other. The mayor claims that he came by to know why Stanley isn't hanging out with his son Nelson anymore. But Stanley replies that he and Nelson are still friends. Just as the mayor is about to leave, Stanley's mom suggests that the mayor should drop him off since he told her that he's going to Clarie's house. But he refused, and as excuse not to go with the mayor, he says he will stay at home for a while so he can spend time with his baby sister. On the other hand, Pat, Missy, and Maybe are already at Clarie's house. They wonder how she sleeps in here as Clarie decorated her room with skeletons and scary stuffs. Clarie's mom shows Stanley her room and she is so proud as it's being so long since Clarie brought friends to their house. Stanley tells his friends on how the mayor was at his house. Clarie figures out that the mayor and his son won't be at their house tonight and suggests they go there as she believes there are some things in his house that ties up all the bad stuffs he has been doing. Pat is hesitant as this is so dangerous, but how else can they going to get anyone believe that the mayor is working with the devil? They all agreed to Clarie's plan and later that night, they make their move in sneaking inside the mayor's house. As they got inside, Pat and Clarie decided to search upstairs, while Missy, Maybe, and Stanley checks downstairs. Pat discovered a secret doorway and called them all together. As they got in, they discovered that the demon was there. Maybe suddenly announces someone is coming. They all went into hiding and they peeped through the window. They see that the mayor is back, but he didn't just show up at his house alone. He brought a pack of vampires and Rugerus along. The mayor is holding a meeting with them at his house. The vampires and Rugerus hate each other, and for the mayor to be holding a meeting among them, he is up to something really dangerous. Maybe turns invisible to go find out what the meeting is about, while the rest continue to search the house. The mayor had forged a fake footage and shows it at the meeting just to make the Rugerus think it was the vampires that killed their former leader called Malcolm. The mayor smiles as his plan is working as the Rugerus are about to start a war with the vampires. Maybe sees the ghost of Malcolm trying to tell the Rugeru leader Lou, his brother, that it wasn't the vampires who killed him but was the mayor who did. But it's too late as the vampires and the Rugerus begin the fight with each other. The mayor wants them to kill each other to avenge the death of his wife. Maybe sees Malcolm Ghost trying to tell them that it was the mayor who killed him, but none of them can hear him apart from Maybe. Maybe asked him to explain everything that happened. The mayor stops the fight and tells them to go fight somewhere else but not his house. He suggested they should go fight somewhere where no single humans are around. The only place where there are no single humans is the town's abandoned amusement park. They all decided to go there and continue their fight. Malcolm Ghost tells Maybe to try and convince the Rugerus that it was the mayor who killed him. Clarie sees the demon Belial from the window and tells Pat. She says she's going to try and stop him, but Pat believes it's a deadly move since Belial is a demon. Clarie is confident as she believes the spirit of Aida Wedo has her back. Clarie confronts Belial and attacks him with her fire powers, but she gets scared as her powers is not effective to the demon. The demon gains advantage of this moment as sucking people's fear makes him more powerful and does so for Clarie. Pat, Missy, and Stanley finally finds a proof in the house, which is the instrument the mayor used to summon the grunches, but Nelson catches them and is really angry that they are spying his house. They show Nelson the instrument which his father used to summon the grunches to prove to him that he is a bad person. Maybe older brother, Pauline, is friends with the vampires as he normally donates his blood to them. Maybe calls him to tell him to try and stop the vampires from fighting the Rugerus as it was the mayor who killed Malcolm and blamed it on the vampires. Just after Maybe ended the call, the mayor catches him. Pauline tells the vampires and they believed because they never trusted the mayor. But the major problem is how they are going to show the Rugerus prove that it was the mayor's doing. On the other hand, just as Belial sucks Clarie fears, he touches her head to show her what awaits her and her friends if she meddles in his plans any further. Clarie sees the future on how all her friends were burnt in a fire. Meanwhile, as Missy, Stanley, and Pat tries to convince Nelson about the kind of person his dad is, he enters holding Maybe on the neck. Belial enters holding Clarie. Clarie, who is so scared, tells her friends to give up. Nelson sees that his friends weren't lying and asked his dad the reason for doing all of these. The mayor tells him the supernaturals killed his mother and tells a story on how that happened. 7 years ago, the mayor with his wife Cassie were good friends with the vampires and the Rugerus. At that time, he was celebrating their wedding anniversary with his wife Cassie. The mayor got distracted just as Cassie was about to kiss him while he drives, making them to get into a very fatal accident. The mayor wasn't hurt, but Cassie was dying as she was badly injured. The mayor begs the Rugerus leader Malcolm and the vampire leader Fiona to save his wife by turning her into one of them, but they couldn't as the humans were watching them, and doing that will only expose what they are. That was the moment the mayor began to hate vampires and Rugerus, and believes it was their selfishness that killed his wife. Pat tells the mayor in front of Nelson that he is the real monster because he killed his father who was a witness to what he did to Malcolm. But to their surprise, Nelson agrees to join his father with his evil plans, and he is tasked in keeping watch on Pat, Missy, and Maybe. Polly begs Fiona to turn into a vampire so he can be strong enough to protect his brother and help them fight their war. Just as he insisted, Fiona gives him a cup filled with her vampire blood. As Pauline drinks it, he immediately transitions to a vampire. We see Clarie tied up by Belial. Belial gives the mayor the dust of a Rugerus bone and the blood of a vampire, and according to his instructions, the mayor uses it to draw a symbol on the ground. Belial tells him that what they are doing is going to call forth another demon into the word. He tells the mayor to use his blood to seal the spell so when the demon comes out, he will have full control over it. Cunningly, the mayor instead pushes Belial into the symbol and quickly uses his blood to trap him. He doesn't want to bring another demon into the world where he can have a perfectly good one at his disposal. Just as the Rougarous shows up at the amusement park, Fiona tries to convince their leader Lou that the vampires weren't responsible for Malcolm's death. Lou doesn't believe them, and this makes the war between them unresistible. The teenagers' parents meet with each other as they have not been able to get in contact with their kids. Clarie's mom, who feels something really big is brewing, suggests to Auntie Alma that they are going to need all the help they are going to get from the spirits. They brought out the city map and asked the spirits to show them where their kids is, and the spirits points at the amusement park. Nelson realizes his dad is on the wrong path and joined the teens to stop him. They arrived at the park as fight between the vampires and Rougarous got more intense. Maybe decides to find Lou so he can show him proof to stop the fight. Just as the teen stops the fight, Maybe tells Fiona and Lou to hold his hand so he can show them proof. He takes them to the Shadow Realm to meet the ghost of Malcolm. Malcolm tells Lou everything on how not the vampires but the mayor is responsible for his death. Lou tells the other Rougarous everything and they all stop their fight. They see the sun is about to come up, and as they hurry to their various houses to take cover, they discover they can't leave with Park as they are being trapped with a boundary spell. The mayor did that so they can all get killed by the sun. Nelson tries to persuade his dad that the death of his mom wasn't their fault, but he doesn't listen. The trapped Belial tells Clarie that the only way out of this is to fight evil with evil. For her to save her friends from the spell, she must kill the mayor. Clarie figures out a really smart plan. She attacks the mayor and forces him to drink the blood of a vampire. The mayor instantly turns into the very creature he hates, which is a vampire, and he cannot get out of the park unless he breaks the spell. Belial comes out from the seal as it was the mayor that was actually holding him. Quickly, he sucks the fear of every creature at the park, which did not only make him so powerful, but also restored back his true form. With the mayor not holding the demon in the symbol anymore, the spell breaks, freeing the vampires and Rougarous as they hurry to take cover before the sun comes up. The mayor attacks Belial who used him. The sun comes up, and since the mayor is now a vampire, he burns to ashes. Lou apologizes to Fiona for blaming them, making the vampires and Rougarous to form a friendship. The teenagers reunite with their parents as they all went to their various homes, but it is revealed that it's not yet over as Belial is still alive. He uses a seal to bring out one of the most dangerous demons from hell, and that was how the season 1 of this show ended. If you want me to continue this show, please let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe this channel. Love you guys.